So, honorable guests, respected faculty members, and my dear friends, a very good morning to everyone present here. I, Paromita, on behalf of Jaipuria School of Business, would like to welcome our guest for the session, Mr. Rakesh Seth, the Chief HR Mentor at Reoxys. Mr. Rakesh has over 30 years of experience, which includes he being the Senior Vice President at Lloyds, Vice President HR at JB, Vice President Direct Tech Trading Tata Group. He also worked with Tharpers, Anands, Shrirams, and 4B schools. His current professional engagements includes corporate training and HR mentoring, management and organizational development, sales training, career development, organization, design, talent management, and the list goes on. Mr. Rakesh is also the author of two books, namely Every Mentor Should Know HR and The Ambitious Executive, A New Leader in Digital Age. Not only this, he has also been an excellent teacher, trainer, consultant, and a speaker who has been invited all over India and overseas as well. At last but not the least, his educational qualification includes 1 year business leaders program from IIM Calcutta, postgraduate diploma in administrative management FMS Delhi, MBA and MA in sociology. Sir, we are very glad to have you with us today and we hope we will have a great experience through this session. So without further delay, I would like to hand over this session to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Great. Okay, now the timings are it ends at 12 o'clock. Am I right? Outer limit is 12 o'clock. Okay, right. Thank you.
Yes.
So what we'll do is that we'll try and understand first the international compensation management or the international compensation design or system from the organizational perspective. So we will also see that where it fits in the organization and where it is used in organizations. You see, so in India we have two set of organizations. One set of organization is typically Indian organizations which are run by the families and cater to the Indian requirements. So there we hardly use any international compensations. But certainly there are a lot of companies in India and abroad which are planning to set up bases in India or which have already set up bases in India, and they deploy the various foreign nationals also who brings with them the technology, expertise and knowledge, and hence the question arises for the Indian owners that how should we compensate the people who come from abroad, okay, and what kind of a benefits we should extend. And the challenge also remains for the people who wants to move from foreign country to India, as whether whatever they are drawing in terms of compensation in their home country, whether they will be compensated with that as they move from their country to country like India. So why I'm using India as the example, because we all live in India and it is better to relate with it, and we can draw some examples also to get a feel of how the international compensation is designed. And to take you through this scenario, I will try to give you a couple of examples, and then we will try and see that how this entire area fits in into that. But let me acknowledge at the beginning that this is a complex topic, and no company does it on its own. They always hire the services of the third party or the top class consultants to help them with the design of the compensations, because this is a compensation which involves the taxations not only in the host country but also in the home country. So therefore companies want to be very, very safe in the areas that when they are paying to their foreign nationals, they should not attract any penalty or extra taxation on account of wrong calculation of the taxes. Therefore, it is important and pertinent to note that please, whenever we go to the workplace, we should not try to do it on our own. We must hire the expertise of the consultant to handle these areas, because I have done this in my various assignments while working in the organizations, and we always took the help of the third party, top class consultants like ENY or KPMG to create a complete comprehensive compensation design for the foreign nationals. Now let's try and understand that if you want to set up a company in India in a collaboration with the Japanese organizations, so what will you do? You always think of having some Indians to set up that company, or to run that company purely by the Indians only. Let me give you three examples of that to understand that better. Like, you have a company called Shriram Honda, Honda, which is operating in India. Then you have a Hero Honda, which is again used to be earlier a Japanese organizations. And then you have a Maruti Suzuki, which was also a hybrid organization, Indian and Japanese. Now, when all these companies are operating in India, they started operating when they were into the businesses for which India did not have any technology, or India was not very strong enough to carry on the businesses on their own strengths. So what these companies did at that point in time, that they said that, okay, we will have a company set up in India which will be jointly run by the Indians as well as by the Japanese. Now, so therefore they decided that we will also have some Japanese nationals to work in India, okay, and in the Indian organizations, and we will have a technology transfer here, and these guys have a expertise in technology, in terms of running and assembling the product in India, and also developing vendors. So when you have this kind of a background, now the question arises that if we are going to have foreign nationals to really come and manage it, so how are we going to compensate these people? So that's where the entire thing arises, that how are you going to really pay them? That's the one situation, and that's the Indian situations. Now, of late, when I'm doing the fast forward, the scenario which I'm presenting to you, this scenario was somewhere around 85 to 1990, when these companies were set up in India. And if we operate in a fast forward scenario in today's environment, where a lot of IT companies have already set up base in India, as well as they are operating in various European and American organizations. Now, when they move people from India to these foreign countries, then how do they compensate them? You see, so that's the another scenario comes. No, you have seen one scenario where the people are coming from other countries to work in India, and you have another scenario now where a lot of Indians have gone abroad, and they are working in US, or in European markets. So how will they be compensated? So what happens, that the thought process that goes into the minds of the people who work in the organizations, that how should we ensure that our best people should go and work in foreign countries, and the same is the viewpoint when the best people need to come from foreign countries to work in India. Okay, so this is where we try and see and work out the international compensation, and that's where the importance of understanding the international compensation is. Let's look at some of the slides to understand it better, because this draws a part of legislations from the perspective of taxation, and also legislations from the perspective of the visas, etc., that you hear quite often nowadays, whether the visas will be relaxed or visas won't be relaxed. So therefore, deploying foreign nationals involves both the taxation side of it and also the income tax side of it. So therefore, the knowledge of income tax is essential for a person who is going to handle the income tax, going to handle the international compensation design, and also knowledge of some employment laws. You see, nobody is perfect in this game, because you only need to know what you need to administer. You need not collect the information which is applicable on a global scale, but you need to have information that you want to exercise in your scenarios, and hence this area of international design comes in. So what we'll cover is that how this international compensation system works and what are the objectives from employer and employees perspective for designing the compensations, international compensation. I use the word compensation. International is, given. Then what are the approaches that we use in terms of sending people from here to other countries, having people from other countries to this. So how do we decide what calls do we take in terms of whether we want to have a balance sheet approach, or we want to have a going rate approach, or we want to then the taxation on the part of the salaries. That's whether you want to follow tax equalization or tax protections. They are more or less similar kind of things. The idea is that when a person is moving from one country to another, he should not carry the headaches of taxation along with him. Because when you move from one country to another, you always look for that what kind of a benefits you are going to draw, and where we also try and see that what are the the perspective that we need to draw. uh, can you hear me, please? Can you see the slides? Hello?
Sir, your slides are not visible. Are you presenting the slides?
Yeah.
The slides are not visible.
So, but I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you are audible. You're very clear.
Now they can see the
Yeah,
slides.
yes.
So this is what we talked about, objectives and the approaches and the tax equalization and tax protection, because ultimately what we want to see that there should be some advantage, not only in terms of experience, but also in terms of how he is going to get protected financially. So that's where the area of global mobility comes. Global mobility is nothing but moving people from of one country to another country for better experience, for careers, for so exposures, understanding culture of the other place. These are some of the objectives that are seen from the employee perspective, and from the employer perspective that we talk about is that they should be able to attract and motivate people to work in the other countries. Okay, and they can send their best people and most productive people to get the advantage of that. So understanding international compensation begins with recognizing variations, differences, and similarities, and figuring out how best to manage them. So this is where we say that you have complexities, but ultimate objective is that how best we can manage this scenario. So there is always a social contract when you sign the employment contract between the employer and the employee. So there's an organization, there are individuals, and there's a government comes in. Okay, so you move from an employment contract to a social contract, and in the social contract you have government, organizations, and individuals. So the idea is that when a foreign national comes to India to work, he should be protected, and that's where the government plays a very important role in ensuring that the guy who comes from the other country, he should not go through any pains. So while relocating from their home country to the host country, that we'll talk about that. There are three kinds of nationals that work with. We will talk about that as we go along. But here, from the home country or the parental country, wherever, let's take the example to understand it better is, as I said, gave the example of a Japan. So you have people coming in from Japan to work in India. So Japan is, for them, is a home country nationals. Okay, India, which is inviting Japanese to work in India, that becomes a host country nationals. Okay, and then you have the home countries are also called the parental countries, and the host country is also called the local nationals. And then you also have some people coming to on board from the other countries also. They are called typically the third country nationals. I'll explain to you as we go along what this home country, host country, and the third country nationals are, because as a HR manager, I need to design compensation for them. They are the strategic guys also for the organizations. When we say the strategic human resource management, they are the strategic guys. Now, who are the strategic guys? The strategic guys are those guys who occupy the critical positions in the organizations, and absence of these positions create a vacuum for the organizations. Okay, therefore they are called the critical and the strategic positions in the organizations. And then while designing the international compensations, what are the areas that we take into account? So we look at it from the organizational perspective, we look at it from the institutional perspective, and we look at it from the economic perspective. So you see four areas. One is the employee side. So when you are looking at employee, the demographics, okay, knowledge, skills, and the attitudes and preferences, behaviors that you have. So this two, when you look at people into the organization, look at it from that perspective. And for which purpose you are hiring them, that's the organizational perspective. The strategic intent of the organization is that they want to deploy best of the guys so that they can apply the technology, innovations, and the work can be performed by the right roles in the organizations, right people in the organizations. And there is an element of autonomy, okay, and the information exchange between the home country nationals and the host country nationals. So these are the perspectives that the organization takes while having or inviting the foreign nationals or the home nationals to the country. And then they also need to look at the institutional side of it, that how the trade unions are going to look at the guys who have come from foreign countries, okay. And then what is the social contract that they have in terms of, or we see the government rules and regulations that they deploy in terms of bringing in the foreign nationals to the India, how their taxation will be handled, how their social security will be protected, and how they will be absolved of various other activities in terms of schooling for the children, the foreign nationals children, and how protected they be when they are here. And then when they are going to drive cars in the Indian environment, so whether these people have their licenses in place or whether they are acquainted with the way the cars are driven in India, you see. And then also the the whether they need to have drivers. So that's when you design social contracts and you design various rules, allowances. So you take care of these perspective also. These are built into the institutional side of it. And then the culture and the politics that operate in the organizations. Where somebody says, what is the role of politics? Politics is like, if you have a Chinese companies working in India, and the kind of a backlash that you have heard recently, that how the politics will impact the employment of the foreign nationals into India. And this is where this part area that we need to look at and protect. And then of course, economic, what is the inflation side of it? What is the market dynamics, capital flows and ownerships, and the taxes side of it? That's the economic side of it. And that's how we need to understand the international compensation. Some people think that what is the importance of understanding international compensation? In my view, that you need to have a feel if you are going to be a corporate guy into a multinational corporations or an Indian organization. You need to have a comprehensive view as to how the compensation design and what are the factors that we need to take into consideration while designing these compensations. That's the employee, organizational, institutional, and the economic factors. This is how it works. And we always work with the assumption that pay system must be designed to fit different national cultures. Is based on the belief that most of the country's inhabitants share a national characters. Job of a global manager search for national characteristics whose influence is assumed to be critical in managing international pay systems. So when we design the compensations, so we always take into consideration the culture of that place. Culture of that place is that I'll talk about that culture of that place as we go along, but to give you a feel of that what culture, what is the culture is to do. Culture is that what is the kind of a housing that you need to provide. Now the housing standards should be aligned with the host home country nationals perspective about the housing. Like if they are going to stay, they are staying in their home country in a palatial houses, so you have to provide similar kind of a palatial house in India. So this is where it means that they are culturally identical, their beliefs are matched, you see. So this is where we talk about studying the culture and managing that side. Now this is the area that we try and see that what is the role of a social securities, insurances and taxes have on the total pay that we pay to them. So now this is one example which I presented to you, is that when you pay somebody some salaries, on the left hand side you see one figure. So that figure is that you let's take a hourly cost of a production worker in manufacturing is in France 17.97. Now, so out of the 17.97, it gets divided into two parts. What is the, directly to the workers, and what goes to the employers, pays in social insurance. So that means almost 45% of that goes into that. Shows you 12.36 and 5.61 goes into the social insurance. Like in India also you have taxes which are to the tune of 33.3%, which works out to approximately that of the total wage that the person draws. What it means that if a person is drawing a package of about 1 crore, out of which 1 crore about 33% will get into the taxable form, or 34.5% will get into the taxation form. That's what it means. That so therefore when you design the compensations, you always take into consideration the taxation side of it. So we'll talk about this as we go along. This just to give you a feel. There are typically few countries that we talk about, although it's not so relevant, but these are presented from the perspective that whenever we design international compensations, we design international compensation from four perspectives. Now those four perspectives are what is the objective that we want to achieve, each one, and then what is the internal alignment that we have into the organizations. That's the internal alignment, like how internally two jobs are likely to be paid. Like you see the Japanese, they say look at various factors like age, ability and all. Now the America, they look at job skills, etc. And then Germany also jobs and experience. So these are the factors that they see in terms of the while carrying out the internal alignment. And in India, it is more of a job based. Like you must have seen your job evaluation sites. So you see that's where the internal alignment comes. Now the objective of the international compensation also to achieve external competitiveness, that your package is such that it is consistent with the competitors, that they should not be able to get attracted to the international to the competitors so easily. So you look at the external competitiveness, and then you also see that the kind of a contribution they are making, these people are making to the organizations commensurate with the kind of money that is being paid to them, the bonuses that are being paid to them. But you have a fixed and the variable element. So these are the broad four objectives that we take into consideration while designing the pay model for the international perspective. So one is the internal alignments. That's your internally aligned with various jobs, and the organizational strategies and the reward strategies are same. External competitiveness you achieve by looking at that you pay as per the competitors are paying. Are you paying more than the competitors? Are you paying lower than the competitors? So you try and see where you fit in and what kind of a competitiveness that you achieve. That's the external competitiveness. And the employee contribution, what kind of contribution each one is paying, and whether that commensurate with the kind of money that we pay to them. See, whenever you design these compensations, you don't design it from the perspective that there will be different people trying different things, but we design it from the perspective that there's a one size fit all. So that's where you export. Basic total pay system designed at headquarters and is exported worldwide. For implementation at all locations, exporting a basic system makes it easier to move managers and professionals among your various locations. One plan from headquarters give all managers around the world a common vocabulary and clear message what the leadership values. Now, this is where you say. Now, let me give you an example to understand this little better. Let's take the case of a Pepsi. Pepsi is an American organization, but they have plants and companies located globally, all places. What will happen? How will they design? They can't, one clear way of doing is that, you have all systems which are, locally arranged. So what do you do is that you design it from the perspective that the components and the benefits more or less remain same, but the you take into consideration the COLA, that is the cost of living adjustments for the local countries, and then you work out your packages based on that. But more or less the benefits which are extended, they remain more or less alike. Only thing, the when I say benefits, in terms of nomenclature they remain same. Nomenclature is the title of the benefits remain same, but the figures in those benefits, they undergo a change depending on the country, depending on the cost of living of that area, depending on the expensive, when say cost of living, whether that country is more expensive than America or that country is less expensive than America, so therefore or that country is equivalent to America. So the country which is equivalent to America, they can simply transport they export the same compensation design. But if it is not the same, then it becomes very difficult. So they have to design local, compensations in terms of the figures, which are based on the higher and lower, inflation factors and the cost of living in that area. Okay, so the broad objectives of the international compensation that we talk about should be consistent with overall strategy, structure, and business needs of the multinational enterprise. MNE is multinational enterprise that we have just talked about with the example of a Pepsi. Must attract and retain staff in areas where the MNE, the greatest needs and opportunities are. What it means that your compensation should be such that people should be able to move from America to any other countries. Like a lot of Indians, they come back to India from the headquarters in America. But when they move back to India from their headquarters in America, they are paid in a manner that they feel attracted to move to America, to India, because of one, the job title, responsibilities. But over and above, what is important is the salary components. So it should be able to attract and retain staff in areas where the MNE, the greatest needs and opportunities are. Like if somebody is settled in America and he has to move to a very, a country which is little difficult to live. So what is the attraction you will give? Let's say America, the Turkey is, let's say today, a little bit of a politically turmoiled country. Now, how will they ensure that the guy who moves from America feels safe in Turkey? So first, the safety. Second, the compensation attraction. Third is the title attraction. Fourth is the experience that he will be getting. And fifth is the potential that if you serve in Turkey for so many years, few years, the chances of your moving into the difficult terrains to the overall global roles are very high. So once you give this kind of attraction, people do move from headquarters to the develop, the difficult terrains. So that's where the compensation objectives comes in, that you pay them fantastic money and also at the same time you help them to move from one country to the other. Should facilitate the transfer of international employee in the most cost-effective way for the firm. That's the global mobility. Transition from one country to another must give due consideration to equity and ease of administration. So the person who is moving from one country to another, he should have lesser and lesser administration headaches of moving from one country to another. So that's the response, that's the objective that they set. And financial protection in terms of benefits such as social securities, the cost of living in the foreign locations that we have talked about, and opportunities for financial advancements and the income and saving is the another part. Now, if you expect people to move from the home country to the host country with their children, so then you have to protect or you have to help them from the housing perspective, where they can live with their family well, children education, recreations are addressed, and the career advancement perspective is also presented to them. So this is a design from the organizational objectives, in the sense that organizationally also the company has people with well-rounded experience available in their kitty at all points in time, so that they can move from one place to another with ease. That's the organizational objectives are in terms of designing the compensations. Now, the individual objectives are, by getting aligned with the compensations, are that the individual gets an objective of better experience, getting newer experience, and also higher pay so that he can save for the longer period of time. And also this becomes a additional potential testing whether the person can work into the difficult terrains, or whether the person can move into and adjust into the diverse environment. Also, the person also can test out himself. So these are the objectives which are seen from the organizational point of view and also from the individual points of view. Now, the types of expatriates that we have typically in the organization, as I gave you the example of the Indian Japanese companies that are setting up in India. So in this, we will have three kinds of people: expatriates, individuals whose citizenship that of the employer's base country. Let's say people moving from Japan to India. So Japanese will be categorized as expatriates. Okay. And third country national, individuals whose citizenship neither employer's base country nor location of subsidiary. So what it means that you set up a base in India, and at the same time you also wants to hire people from the other countries, because those skill sets are not available in India nor in Japanese, neither in India nor in Japan. So you hire them from Singapore. Now the nationals who are coming from Singapore to work in India, so they will be categorized as a third country nationals. And then the local country nationals is the LCNs, that's the host country nationals, also called individuals who are citizens of the country in which the subsidiaries is located. Now, in this case, as I told you, in India, the Indian nationals will be categorized as a LCNs, that's the local country nationals, or the host country nationals. India is a host for the Japanese, so this is how you have types of expatriates. Now, the challenge comes, you have to work around with the compensations of three set of people. One, the expatriates. Second, the third country nationals who have moved from Singapore or from any other country, let's say Europe, or from the Bangladesh. Also, you have people working in India. So we'll talk about that. So you have seen the example wherein a Japanese and a Indian company setting up a base in India, and you have all these four countries nationals working in India. You have a Japanese nationals working in India. You have a Indian nationals working in India. You have a Singapore nationals working in India, and you have a Bangladesh nationals working in India. So now the challenge becomes that how you are going to compensate all these four guys, because all these four guys will be paid differently depending on the kind of a employment contract you have signed with them, and how you are going to treat them. So this is where we try and understand it more from the technical perspective, and it brings with it the complexities also of the cultural fitments, not only from the family perspective, that how they are going to operate in the shop floor also. So this is where we say having a knowledge of that. I repeat, expatriates are people of the home country nationals. Now, expats, home country nationals are also called. They are also called the parent country nationals. PCNs also the home country nationals, and HCNs also the host country nationals. Okay. And TCNs are the third country nationals, the nationals who are not neither from Japan or India, but from Singapore or Bangladesh. They are called the third country nationals. Now, the local country nationals are typically the host country nationals also they are called, because host means where you are having it. And advantages of hiring local nationals and advantages of bringing in expatriates or third country nationals, there are many. There are disadvantages and advantages also. So, these guys like the, expatriates are generally not called for the permanent positionings. They are called for the temporary positioning, because they turn out to be very expensive as compared to the local scenario if you compare it in India. So therefore the companies always say that we will have someone for 1 year, 2 years, and then let him come and we'll have a couple of understudies under them, and then they can learn and get trained from them, and then the expats can go back to its own country, and these companies can be run by the typically the host country nationals. Like you look at some of these Japanese companies which are operating in India. When they came here, set up a base. At that point in time, they had about 50 odd people working in India, 25 odd people working in India, depending on the size of the organization. And the same company, if you look at today, they have only 3 or 4 people working in India. Now, they are 3 or 4 people more from the perspective of positions which are described as very critical in nature. That's where we call the expats are deployed. But less and less number of expats are deployed in these companies over a period of time. So they are, because of the expensiveness, because of the costs that are involved in hiring nationals also. Now, the elements of expatriate compensations typically are, when we design it, is the salary part of it, the housing part of it, the taxes part of it, allowances and premium part of it. So the salary is the base salary which is paid to the individuals from the perspective that how is going to live here, and what is the inflation factor. So all that get into the base salary part of it. And then in addition to that, you provide him a housing. Housing is provided based on the kind of the family size he has. If he's a single, so you provide him similar kind of a thing. If he's with a family of 3 or 4 children, then you provide him a bigger house depending on that. Then the taxes part comes, that how you are going to take care of the taxes. For that, we will talk about this in our subsequent slides. The tax protection and the tax equalizations, how the companies take care of that. You see, the idea is that when people move from one country to another country, so there is an element of taxation comes, because in some countries, the host country, let's say the taxation could be high, and when you go to the another country, the taxation could be low, or vice versa. So therefore, the question arises that who is going to be bear the additional components. But if the tax is less, then who is going to look at that? So this is where companies, this is not a legal part of it. This is a policy of the company. A tax equalization is not a legal requirement, but it is a policy of the organization, that how they are going to treat or manage the taxes of the individuals. Whether it will be handled by the individual concern or it will be handled by the organization. So that's where you try and see tax equalization and the tax protection part of it. We'll deal with this subsequently in one couple of slides to have a better understanding of that. And then the allowances and the premiums. Allowances could be in terms of, for example, you give a car. Now, this national may be driving a car in the home country, but when he comes to the another country, like say host country in India, where the driving is a big problem. So do you allow him to drive, or you provide him a driver? So typically the scene of a driver comes in. If he is going to have a driver, then who is going to pay for that driver? Because he doesn't have that facility in the home country. And if that part is there and he is to be paid, then who is going to bear the taxes on account of the salaries being paid to the drivers? So these are these kind of nitty-gritty issues that come up when we design the expatriate compensation. So these are to be tackled accordingly, and these are to be managed accordingly. What it means primarily, that insurance side of it. Now, whether you have insurance taken in the local country also, and he has a home country also, he has a insurance, that how you are going to pay for that insurance when he moves in. So because insurance is the one factor which each company wants to have it on the first go, not only for individual but also for the family. Okay, so the common allowances in expatriate pay package that we generally see are the financial allowances, the social adjustment assistance, and the family support that we have talked about. So financial allowances more from that how is going to live, what's going to eat. Okay, that's part is the financial allowances taken care of, and social adjustment is the kind of a social securities that she is going to have, and the family support social adjustment typically in the Indian environment could be, that how is going to get the provident funds, like let's say if he gets a salary, his provident fund will be deducted or not will be deducted, so that's to be seen. So, and the family support, you see, what kind of a family support you are going to provide to that person, because that's also part of allowances, and that also part of money which is paid to that person. Okay, and this will be also taxed, and we will be bearing these tax. You see, generally when we deploy these expatriates, we generally sign, there are three kinds of situations that can arise. Now, whether you are going to have a, temporary assignments, short-term temporary assignments, let's say about 60, 70 days, or you're going to have a long-term, assignments, temporary assignments, typically for, let's say, 2 years, 1 year, 2 years, or you are going to have a permanent assignments. Okay, so this is where we try and, differentiates the kind of assignments that you have. And whether you are going to pay them which currency, whether you're going to pay them local currency, or you're going to sign a altogether new employment contracts. So what you're going to do with that. So these are the various factors that you need to work around with this. Now when I say the altogether a new contract, in the sense that local contract and salaries are paid based on the local contracts, let me give you an example to understand that better. Let's say, in one of the companies where I worked, we had a plant in Prague, and we had a plant in India also in Bhiwadi. So we had, transferred one of the nationals from Czech nationals from Prague to India on a local contract and a long-term contract that he is going to work with us for a period of 5 years, etc. So once we sign up that contract of 5 years with him, that's a long-term contract, that's a permanent kind of a contract that is going to work for us. Now, what happens in that situation is that he will be governed by the local stuff that we will pay him in terms of the money, etc. And he is also, employment legion from that, other country, that's Prague, will not be there. So what it means that if anything happens, he will not go back to the same company, back to Prague, but this will altogether treated as a new employment. That means that he has resigned from the Prague plant, came to the Indian plant, and becomes a permanent employee of the Indian plant. So if he resigns from here, he will not be absorbed in the Prague plant. He will go to some other plant, he will look for another employment opportunities. Now you can also have this kind of a agreement. So now it depends what you want to do, but generally whenever we have these expatriate scenarios, we always look at it from two perspectives. One is the short-term contract, or it is the long-term temporary contracts, and people generally go back to their own principal companies from where they have come from. Now we're going to talk about two approaches. Now, okay, let me give you an example to make it understand it better. Let's say you want to move some people from India to America for a period of, let's say, 8 months, 9 months. So how are you going to pay them? Now, if you are a owner, how will you pay them? What kind of a perspective that you will have? Can you hear me? Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're audible. Very audible, sir.
I'm audible to the kids, the students also?
Actually, they are, but they are being put on mute, so they won't be able to answer. But
Okay.
you are audible, sir.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
All right. Okay. Now, see, the whole idea is that when you are going to shift people, move people from India to US or to any other country, what kind of a perspective that comes to your mind? So the question arises that what is the best way we can help them to, so that they move also, and they do not have any headaches also, and they do not have any fear also. Now, one way of making out the compensation is that you entirely make a new compensation from them and send it to US. Okay, that's the one way of looking at it. Now, the another way of looking at it, what you say is that whatever you are drawing in India scenario, that we will protect, that you will continue to get in your account, but we will give you a daily allowance as long as you stay in America. Okay, so you are not out of your pockets. So this is where we try and see some of the balance sheet approach that we use. So that's makes sometimes more sense that a person is going from India, his salary is protected, whatever is drawing here, but in addition to that, he is being paid additional money, which is will be for his stay in America to meet up with the daily expenses there. Okay, so there also he is not out of pocket. So both the places, you get protected. Now, this kind of a compensation is designed for Indians who are sent on a temporary assignments of 180 days or maybe a little more than that. Is that since they are not moving out with their families, so their families can continue to enjoy the salary what he's getting here, and while he is there in America, so he can continue to earn additional part to meet up with their local expenses that are there. So this is how you work around with this part of it. So balance sheet approach, what it says is, it's now these. Let me explain to you. When you design international compensations, they are more from the perspective of common sense, and then some theorists give it a name. So theorists give it a name that okay, I have to work out. So how do I design that? Those things. So, but it is the common sense that you protect his local salaries, and when he goes there, you pay him for that meeting his local things, so that he is not out of the pocket. So that's the one scenario that you take. Now, the another scenario that comes to your mind is that if is going to go there for a longer period of time, so what happens is that people of the similar types who are working there, so how will we compensate him there? How should we decide that how much we need to pay? So whether we need to pay there to align with what is being paid to the people of that country or not. Like you must have seen that in the Indian environment also, that lot of question came in that a lot of Indians who go to work in America, they are paid much lower than what the local staff is being they are earning. So the whole idea is that when you send more and more people, you pay them, protect their salary, pay them the additional things, and they remain much under. So therefore, the US government started off that for the local work, you have to have the local guys also, because you are doing a lot of undercutting by deploying Indians on those jobs, which are otherwise quite expensive in America, but you are paying them much lower than what exactly they need to have. So therefore, they created this scenario. Now, this is what we say, basically the going rate approach, where people who are working in that other countries are being paid as per the salaries of the other nationals who are drawing a similar kind of a, work. That's the going rate approach that we take. How do you work out the going rate approach? We'll talk about as we go along. So there are two approaches that we talk about. One is the balance sheet approach, and then second is the going rate approach. Now, in the balance sheet approach, the premise is employees on overseas assignment should have same spending power as they would in their home country nationals. So that's the premise that they have, and that's where we work out their packages on that basis, on a daily rate basis. And home country is the standard for all payments. So this is how you look at. And objectives is to ensure cost-effective mobility of people to global assignments, ensure expatriates neither gain nor lose financially, so they don't pay out of their own pockets, and minimize adjustments required of expatriates. Minimum adjustment means you pay them in the foreign currency when they're in a foreign country, and your local salaries are also protected on that basis. Okay, and some of the basic objective is to maintenance of home country and living standards plus financial inducements. Home country pay and benefits are the foundation of this approach. Adjustments to home packages to balance additional expenditure in host country, and financial incentives, expatriates hardships being added to make the package more attractive. And most common system is usage by the multinational firms, and this is where they use this balance sheet approach. So the whole idea is that they are not spending or they are not altering too many things, so they are paying them based on that. And this is one example. This is where the balance sheet of categories: goods and services, housing, income taxes. There, PC is the parent countries, and the HC is the host country income taxes, and contributions to savings, payments for pension contributions, etc., etc. So that's how the needs to be worked around with. Okay, so this we have also talked about some of the advantages that we see here is equity between assignments, equity between expatriates of the same nationality. Okay, the equity in the sense that if two Indians are working in US, so both will draw the similar kind of money, you know. So that's where the equity between the expatriates of the same nationality. Because if you have worked out as some foreign nationals, the same allowance when they are in America, so there's the equity. Facilitates expatriates re-entry, easy to communicate to employees, and can result in great disparities at times between expatriates of different nationalities. Let's say if there are people of other countries also working and doing the same kind of work, so they get governed by the packages of the other countries. You know, that's the only disadvantage is that. But in most of the places, you know, people use this approach only. Other approaches: compensation, negotiations, localizations, modified balance sheet, decreased allowances, lump sum cafeteria plans. These are the approaches that are used. You know, lump sum cafeteria plans are designed to suit the individuals, and they say, okay, this is what it is. You can choose whatever you can pick up from there. You know, and this is the going rate approach that I talked about. It is based on the local market rates. More local market rates are, when I said that when you are in the US, so relies on survey comparison among local nationals, that is the home country nationals, okay, and then the local nationals are the host country nationals, and the expatriates of same nationalities and expatriates of all nationalities. Compensation based on the selected survey comparison, base pay and benefits may be supplemented by additional payments. You know, this is where we talk about the going rates. Okay, example which I gave you of the going rate. We'll see that in subsequent slides also. And the equality with local nationals, simplicity, identification with the host country, and the equity among different nationals. So these are some of the advantages. What it means that you also draw the similar kind of a package, which the other people are drawing, doing the similar kind of a work. So this is where we say the going rate approach. Now some companies, they don't opt for it. The going rate of approach is that you have to do a lot of adjustments when you bring back those guys, or you move those guys from one country to another country. You see, so this is where the issue comes up, and this is where we say the plus approach that we work out. You cost plus approach. So whatever is there, you pay to the employees, and then you work around based on that. That's the plus approach that we talk about. Okay, then the question comes, okay, now we have primarily talked about two kinds of approaches. One is the going rate approach and the balance sheet approach. Now, balance sheet approach is followed based on the more of a home country principles, and the going rate approach is followed most based on the how the host country nationals are being paid and how the other expatriates are being paid. You try and bring them on the same level with the other expatriates also doing a similar kind of work. And whereas a balance sheet approach, you use more from the protection perspective, that the person is not out of pockets and he enjoys being there. And more, the balance sheet approach is used more when you are sending people on a short-term, temporary assignments. It is works very well in that situations. And the going rate is used when you send people for long-term, temporary assignments. So that's where the companies use that. But it is not something which is a defined formula, but this is what the practice is. Because when you design international compensations, you design them from the perspective of what your policies are, and then how you practice them. And your policies, practices, and the procedures are carried out and designed keeping in view how your competitors and how others are paying them. You see, like, let me give an example of that is to understand it a little better. Let's say we have in India companies like Infosys, companies like Tata Consultancy, HCL, and Cognizant, let's say, there are four companies which operate, Wipro, let's say, they operate in similar kind of a businesses. Now you will invariably find that when people from these companies, they go on international assignments, people of the, let's say team leader level or people of the general manager levels, more or less draw a similar kind of the, packages. There is not much of a difference in packages being paid to one person versus vis-a-vis the other person. And this is where we take the example of a going rate concerns when they place people outside India on a long-term assignment. So, you see. Now, when you post people on a long-term assignment or short-term assignment outside India, so there is an element of taxation comes in. Now, how to approach the taxation side, that's also an important part of it. Now, taxation, as I said, that we take the two routes for that purpose. One is the tax equalization and tax protection part of it. Now, the tax equalization is the MNE, that is the multinational enterprise withholds tax obligation and then pays all taxes in the host country, okay, or the home country. This is where we talk about that. So that's where the tax equalization. Now, tax equalization, the responsibility for higher taxes and lower taxes rests with the company. So they are responsible for paying that. And the taxation could arise on account of, as I said, many things: your base salaries, your housing, your cars, and the perks that you have given, the social securities. And some countries, you move from one place to another, the taxation could be high, and in some places the taxation could be lower. So the whole idea is that who is going to take care of that? Because in the minds of the individual, there is always a element that who is going to protect me from the taxation. It should not happen that I work here and when I go back, so I start getting notices from the taxation department on account of the taxes part of it. So that's also the thought process that comes to the mind of the individual. So therefore, in organizations provide him with all kinds of help. So that's where the tax equalization. They say that if taxes are lower, it will be, you will get the reduced one. If taxes are higher, company will pick up that part. So that's where the tax equalization comes in. Okay, and whatever is the payment on account of this, it is done by the multinational enterprises. Now, the second approach that we talk about in tax protection, so employees pays up to amount he or she would pay on the compensation. Now, here the tax protection means that the taxation is the responsibility of the employee. He pays it. Okay, but of course he is protected in the sense that but on a monthly basis or ongoing basis, so it is paid by the employee, and towards the end of the year, so whatever comes, okay, if it is on a higher basis, then it is paid by the company to that employee. But if it is on a lower basis, then it is not taken away from the employee. So this is where the tax protection angle comes in, and this is the differentiation that you see between the tax equalization and the tax protection. And most of the now the question arises that which approach generally companies followed. Now the companies generally follow, and the employees also are comfortable with when they go with the tax equalization part of it. So that the headache of that is not of the individuals, because what happens is that there are always some fiscal designs which are announced by the government from time to time, and in some places the fiscal designs are also what do you call it, announced from the retrospective effect. So when the fiscal designs are announced from the retrospective effect, now then it becomes very difficult for the employees to take care of that part. So that's where the companies opt for more, our individuals opt for more of a tax equalization side, so that on account of taxes there is no headache on the individual on this side. Now, as a student of HR, what I need to understand is that I need to understand how the international compensations are designed. Okay, what are the various components, and what is the tax side of it, and what are the various employment laws through which the expatriates developed. because we are also as in HR responsible for their safety of their families, and ensuring their welfare and well-being, and therefore we need to keep them in a hygiene conditions, and we need to look after them from all kinds of perspectives, not only from the taxation perspective. So that's the broad understanding that we have in terms of designing of these compensation for the expat staffs. So it is it is a, as I said, a very very important area for the organizations, because it also calls for the taxes, and it also calls for the they get reported into the balance sheets of the organizations also. And this is how need to take care of this international compensation with seriousness. It is not a casual work which is done by anybody, but it is a something which calls for a detailed experiments. So what you need to know about this as a precautions, what an international compensation manager needs to know or familiar with. Number one, he should be familiar with the income tax laws, in the sense that he should know how this operates. He should be familiar with the general cost of living side. He should be familiar with the education side, because the children education aspects that are needed. So point which I'm trying to say, that whenever the expats move into the country, he he needs to look at whether he's moving alone or he's moving with the family. So if he's moving with the family, what we need to carry out. If he's moving alone, what we need to carry out. And then what is the social security benefits? So what is the status of the provident funds? What is the status of the gratuity that will be paid to them? Why? What happens is that these are the rules, regulations which undergoes change in any country from time to time. Like in India, as you see that we are on the threshold of changes that we are going to see based on the 4 codes that are going to get created out of the huge number of laws. And same thing happens in the other countries also. So therefore the HR professional, the HR compensation manager needs to understand and they feel of what kind of changes that are likely to happen in that. So this is where we talk about some of the issues that we need to look at. And in nutshell, when we design this part, we design it from the perspective of the internal context, external context, and the pay context. On the pay context is that this is what our area of understanding is, that what should be the pay mix, what should be the pay level, standardization versus localization of practices that we need to look at, and what is my pay strategies in terms of job versus skill, performance versus seniority, individual versus group performance, short-term versus long-term orientation, risk aversion versus risk-taking, corporate versus divisional performance, hierarchical versus egalitarian. Okay, this is where we norms that we follow. What it means that, so sometimes why you need to understand that job versus skill is that sometimes you would have expatriates doing a work which can be easily done by the local person. Now that who has to raise this voice, that's where the pay strategy comes in. Whether this work can be done by the local, well done, or it can't be done. So what is the seniority level needed to perform a particular kind of a work? Whether you need a very well qualified guy from a foreign country to come to India and carry out this activities, or this can be done by locally. So this is where we draw the pay context while carrying out these activities. Now, this is where we say international compensation. So what we have talked about, to summarize, is we have talked about what is international compensation, why it is paid, what are the cultural aspects that we need to look at in terms of identifying the various types of nationals in the organizations. And we talked about the 3 types of nationals. They are the third country nationals, home country nationals, and the host country nationals. Host country nationals are those nationals where the plant is being set up. Home country nationals are those nationals who come from the headquarters, expat staffs. And third country nationals are those nationals which are hired from any other countries from the host or the home country. That's the third country nationals that we have talked about. We talked about two approaches for managing these international expatriates. One is the balance sheet approach. Second is the going rate approach. Balance sheet approach is preferred when we send people for the short terms, because you don't have to pay much. You have to protect the local salaries and pay them the additional ones for being in the other countries. And the going rate approach that we talked about, where you try and compensate people based on what the other nationals and other expat people are drawing, and you draw some kind of a similarities, equalities, amongst the people from various nationals doing a similar kind of work. That's the going rate approach. And then we talked about some taxation side of it. That's the tax equalizers and the tax protections. More or less same, but tax equalization is more from the perspective that the employer takes care of everything in terms of additional or lower taxation part of it. And in the tax protection side of it, the organization protects the employees, but responsibility for the taxes rests with the individual. I talked about the downside of it, which is not that if there are some retrospective fiscal redesigns, the impact of that comes on the individual. So therefore, companies prefer to have a tax equalization strategies for the organization. But this is where we talked about. And lastly, you need to look at the advantages and disadvantages of deploying, nationals into your organizations. So with this, I end the talk. So if you have any question, you are most welcome to ask. So hope you are able to take it up. But for the students to understand it a little better, you can go to the YouTube and you can have a look at the tax equalization. You listen to the YouTube these talks also, because this is something which is used greatly in multinational organizations where the global mobility is the order of the day, because people move from not only from America to India, but America to Europe, America to Africa, and to CIS countries. So that there the challenge comes, and somebody moving from, let's say, Syria. So how will you attract people to move to Syria from America, or in a Lebanon? So countries which are in a difficult terrain. So these are some of the challenges that you face in the international compensations. So with this, I take a pause. Hope I am able to communicate the questions.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. Students, if you have any question, 1 or 2 questions can be answered. Do you have any question? I think, thank you so much, sir. The way you took the class and so nicely you have explained, elaborately you have explained every concept, and the way you recapitulated everything at the end, I think the students, they are very clear about what they have learned in the class. I really am honored and I'm thankful that you took out your time from your precious schedule, from your precious time. And thank you so much, sir, for taking the class.
Thank you very much. Thank you.